First of all, thank you. Thank you for the clicker. Thank you for the lovely intro, and thank you all for being here. I was announced twice in front of HTech Group, in front of industry, but I feel it's relevant to say that I do teach statistics at the Faculty of Medicine. So I kind of tend to inject a little bit of mathematics into all my lectures and hope somebody likes it, and I really hope I made it happen today. To begin, we do, as some of you already said, we are facing a transformative age of LLMs, and I feel it's being brought together by a revolution in the way that we speak with the machines. We have to get the terminology out of the way, right? So LLMs, large language models, we frequently call them ChatGPT, which is kind of dismissive because we are developing so many models all around the world in academia and industry as well. So let's be specific. LLMs, how do we actually deal with them? In addition to all of us being users, some of us are doing it at a high level, like visions and trends and driving this now towards future. Then we have many scientists which are developing field-specific models. And this is kind of a math-heavy part. Everybody tends to shy away from it a little bit. And then, not in the least important, regulations and limitations, which includes ethics and everything we need to settle in order to use this successfully. So this middle one is important because it requires the knowledge of mathematics. And I've tried to give you some statistics on it. It's very difficult to kind of aggregate. If you look at the studies, a varying but large percentage of students around the world dislike or are afraid of mathematics. And this also goes for the general population. 50% of USA citizens report math anxiety when they use it. And I will be indiscreet now, if you allow me, and ask you briefly, how many of you, is there somebody here who felt like they disliked mathematics or found it difficult? Can I see a show of hands? You can be shy, it's just for me to see it. Thank you, I won't tell you the result, it's just between you and, you and me. Let me tell you, programming and coding, they are some sort of mathematics, obviously, and people shy away from it as well. But we don't shy away from LLMs. Sam Altman told us it's 800 million weekly users right now. And it's kind of, in food, you have that people have varying tastes, but everybody likes ketchup or even better, chocolate. LLMs are the chocolate of coding and AI. Everybody likes using them somehow. Since we, as I named this, our cognitive work kind of became a chorus of machines and men. So it's a question like, it seems that they're thinking with us. And when we ask, do they really think, or will they one day? It's always easy to quote Noam Chomsky. He is fantastic, and he actually told us, as you see, the thinking is a human feature. It's the same. If you can say the submarines swim, then in that way, yes, robots and machines will think one day. But otherwise, it's a purely human feature. But how does this magic come to pass? Why do we ask this question all over again? Why do we feel that the machines are thinking even though they're not? This is a very simple schematic of an artificial neural network, and LLMs fall into this category. Now, this schema looks really ugly and it's simple, because if I was to try to generate this schema with an LLM, like give me an overview how an LLM works, you would get something really nonsensical. So it's always good to outline that they are still very bad at making schematics, which we frequently need. And so this is the natural intelligence making a schematic. It's very reductive, but it will serve the purpose. So we have the inputs on the left, and then in the middle we have all this magic, which I don't have to list, but attention is a major part. It is the revolution of LLMs. And then on the right, we have individual outputs. Now notice these inputs, this might be relevant. Some of you already know this, that inputs on the left, they're called a context window. It's the length of text you can process at the same time, and this is really useful and important. This is how we rank them by use. And on the right, all these outputs, they're actually individual, I would say words, even though that's not exactly correct, but it is our vocabulary. So one neuron, one output, it's actually one word. So how does this actually work and generate this magic? So since you see we can only get individual words, it's important to know that this works by predicting the next word always. It happens very quickly, so you feel like it's generating whole sentences at once, but it's not. It's going word by word. And you can tell that this is why it's important, that a change in a single word cascades the change downstream. This is relevant for the generative nature of AI. Now, all of these are made from neurons, artificial neurons. And how does this work? When you fire them with inputs, the signal propagates, and on the right, you get probabilities. So when I tell you, if you feel that this is magic, that this is thinking, and this generates words, it doesn't. It actually generates probability. It generates statistics. And so I know I paused, like I made it cool right now, but it's not cool yet. We can do fantastic stuff with these numbers on the right. So you can see that some of the words are more likely than the others based on the text of the structure of the text so far. And some are really unlikely. But what can we do with that? We can take, you see we have output number 2. You have very high probability that that's the word continuing the sentence. And then you have some less likely but possible ones. What you can do, you can always take the best one, the highest one, but that is kind of deterministic. And in a sense, we don't want that for a system that prides itself on being generative and wants to be creative. So what we can do, we can also take one of top 3 here, or top 5, or top N words, but we can also make sort of a lucky draw, a lottery of some sort, and you have the probabilities here. So each word then gets a chance. Not all neurons are made equal, but they're all allowed to participate, and at some point they might get chosen for the next result. And this is an interesting strategy to make. Why is that? Because sometimes you want the most likely word to happen, and that's a good feature. But sometimes it's undesirable. If you are writing contracts, if you're writing something that needs to be deterministic, it doesn't need to be creative in the classical sort of way. You should be relying on the most likely word and on those high probability things. And this is important. I've heard that people dislike contracts even more than statistics. This is something that's very useful, but general GPT, for example, and general LLMs are not very good at this. So they might seem to do that, but they cannot follow. So here, for deterministic documents, we want this to be a principal place of business. We don't want this to be, it could be a place of residence, but maybe it could be a creative answer, like a place of hope. But we don't want that. This is a serious document. But then if we are writing art or trying to generate it, we all try that, like write me a poem of some sort. How does that work? So this is a song by Stephen Crane, and you can read it briefly, and it's very poetic, and then in the end, it's the creature is eating its heart, and then when you say, is it good, friend? And the creature replies, it is. And then, so first of all the major LLMs actually saw this song, so they will give you the right answer. The right answer is, it is bitter. But it could also, if you were looking for the most likely result and you want it to be deterministic, it would probably be something else, like it is. It would just be a dot, or maybe it is not. So creativity is actually taking a less probable but still valid reply. So if we have these opposing requirements, how can we deal with that? Well, we go back to choosing the next word, and then if I plot this like some sort of probability line, this is called the polygon of frequencies on the right, There is a fantastic feature, mathematical feature called a temperature. This exists in all of LLMs that I know of. It's not readily exposed to you as a user, but you can reach it. So what the temperature does, it can give the underdog neurons, those less lucky contenders, their opportunity. And the temperature ranges from 0 up to 1 and even higher. What happens here? So if we set this temperature, it globally warms. You can think of it like it globally warms these peaks on the right and kind of evens out the chances. It's really fun to see how it differs. So let's look at this. I just started the sentence and said continue. So it's arose. If you set the temperature to 0, you have the remaining probabilities, and then you get a very trivial answer. A rose is a flower. A matter-of-fact answer, which is, of course, correct. And then if I use 0.5, then you get an answer which is more like a Wikipedia one. Like a rose is a woody perennial flowering plant of the genus Rosa, which is something we frequently need when writing reports and things like that. But then if you push it up to 0.9, which is relatively high, the default setting is 0.7 in major LLMs, by the way. And then sometimes you might get something, again, unsurprising, but then you might get something resembling art or genius. This is from Gertrude Stein's famous poem, but you might get a rose is a rose is a rose is a rose, which is it's genius, but very unexpected. Why would somebody say this? And then if you drive this further up, above one and go beyond, you get instability. And then the sentence, as it goes, it breaks down. With the first unusual word, it can literally, and you can see that, go into random characters or stuff, or unpredicted results. So even in LLMs, which are not alive, you can see that creativity and genius, they do border on insanity. So this was my first argument, that math can generate language. But this actually cuts both ways. There is frequently in medical research, we have a lot of information on the patients, and all the doctors present here know that your general job as a physician of any kind is to sift through that information and know the relevant contextual information. We do that formally in our statistics by using different kinds of predictor selections, feature selection models. And one of the important ones and useful ones is called lasso regression. What lasso regression actually does, it shrinks the irrelevant predictors to 0 and uses only the relevant ones. So looking at the data in standard statistics, we can do the selection and choose only those which appear relevant from our data and make the model smaller and more robust. But this lasso can be further augmented. The math can be augmented to something called LLM lasso. This is the preprint paper. It's very recent. What it actually does, you just take the names of the variables, which even with those abbreviations and maybe mistakes in writing, they do give contextual information. When you invoke an LLM to aid the lasso, it goes through everything it has learned throughout literature and written text and gives you the contextual information it has learned. When you think about it, like, why would you do that? You have everything in your data. Why would you need to know what's happening in those texts? Well, you know that when you do a study in your own data center, on your own data, you have some biases, local batch effects that you need to handle. And this is introducing the general information from all around the globe and throughout time to aid you in this process. Sometimes it can harm your case because that's not all the texts are relevant for your use case, but conversely, it can be a type of regularization. So in that way, it actually makes your model stable and efficient. And then, since this transcends locality, I can show you that it also transcends humanity. This is a type of models which they're called evolutionary scale models. They're actually, it's the language of proteins. You can, for every mutation, for every single letter in the genetic code that creates proteins, you can actually get the probability like those that I've shown you. And for me, this was mind-blowing, that you can actually get scores and predictions of variants. The more surprising a mutation, the more potential effects it can have downstream. But it seems like it's surprising, and it's so easy to use. I urge you all to try it. But it's not really. If you look at the back at the traditional central dogma, if you see the words that they have used decades ago, which are transcription, translation, even replication, those are all words that can be efficiently used in text processing. So by the intuition that we have those letters and that we have the sentences formed by them, the language of molecular biology is also subject to the same mathematics we saw before. And the final and maybe most daunting one is something called emergent behavior of LLMs. So to explain the terminology, emergent behavior is appearance of novel capabilities suddenly once the model reaches a certain stage. And this is not something that you specifically train the model for. So whenever we only trained our LLMs to understand general text. But from that, they suddenly learn grammar, which we didn't attempt to teach them. In the end, they learn something akin to cognition. So what does this mean? It means that it can solve complex mathematical problems even though it hasn't seen too many of them. And there is an experimental, we haven't seen that model, but again, Sam Altman, he claimed in a post that their experimental model has actually managed to get a gold medal at the Mathematical Olympics in 2025. And it seems that this understanding of high-level mathematics is also an emergent behavior. So I feel that these are 4 compelling arguments that language and mathematics, that they are actually equivalent. So I have to now briefly go back to asking all of you if you like or dislike math. As you see, whenever you speak, whenever you talk, whenever you write, you are actually using mathematics all along. So in a sense, I want to say I'm sorry you do like math, or maybe even better, congratulations. You all are actually very good at mathematics. I like to tell my students, whenever you say, actually, I don't want to do mathematics, you're actually using a tiny fraction of mathematics to avoid doing more of it. It's kind of like a vaccine. Like you use an easy form of it to prevent a more complex and difficult version of mathematics. So I like to say that vaccines work even for mathematics. Remember that. It's in the next, but this also creeps in a question. If all of our speech, everything we do, it's just mathematics, does it actually impact our perception of self negatively? Okay, machines don't think, but do we think? What happens with us? There is a really nice psychological definition that fits with this story. This is called the story of narrative identity. And it says that your sense of self is actually a narrative woven around the external data. So we are all some sort of story. And with that in mind, for this conference, I wish you a multitude of stories and happy sharing. Thank you.